think the sort of the playbook will be, first of all, to bring these protests under control. The next thing will be to apportion blame and responsibility, and that we'll hear more of the narrative of overzealous local officials. And from central government, then perhaps an acceleration in moderation of some of these policies. But it is still going to take time. It is still related to the production of vaccines. They have a domestic mRNA vaccine coming up from a number of different suppliers. But the key pressure they face is that they have a significant proportion of the elderly population, particularly over 80s, who are not vaccinated. And if they are not vaccinated, based on sort of Hong Kong figures, the fatality rate is just shy of 15%. And given the sort of proportions we're talking about, that's nearly 1.5 million people. Add in the sort of the efficacy and fatality rates for the sort of the next grouping, 70 to 79 and then 60 plus. In aggregate, they could see fatalities of over 2.25 million people, and their medical system simply isn't up to that. So it's going to be a measured process. But from an investment point of view, I think we don't change. They're on a path towards reopening, baby steps, I think. But these protests have certainly put the pressure on.
Frederick Newman, who joined us earlier this morning from HSBC, suggested that, if anything, the protests could put pressure on the authorities to move more quickly on the reopening into 2023. And he thought there may be a modest positive in that for investors. One, do you agree? And two, is any part of the Chinese equity market investable at the moment?
Well, to the first point, possibly. I think that that privately, certainly, the central government feels there will need to be a response. As for whether the market is investable, absolutely. I think we are faced with an economy that is under pressure from zero COVID and from deleveraging from the property sector. But in both cases, we are on a trajectory of improvement that we do expect to see a reopening coming up in the next sort of couple of quarters, 2-3 quarters. So by the middle of next year, I think we do certainly expect to see a very different situation on the zero COVID side. And on the property side, the sort of expected collapse in that property sector has not happened. There have been lines of credit that have been extended that buys time. And so I think from that perspective, we are not sort of massively concerned about that. The country is running one of the largest fiscal deficits it has for a number of years. It's sort of coming up for about 9% of GDP. But, the US is at sort of 13-14% of GDP, as, countries that are coming out of the COVID conditions have had to run significant deficits, but nevertheless, we think that China can fund it. So from our perspective, we think that China is absolutely investable. There are great opportunities there, but I think we have to be very realistic of what we can expect from China, which is follow domestic businesses that are aligned with the long-term industrial plan that's been laid out for the last 10 years or so, the development of pillar industries and things that will contribute to China's long-term growth and wealth creation.